can you tell us how you connected with PRS and how did the signature model come about?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a long story that developed over a long period of time, but I bought my first PRS in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
I met Paul at a guitar show in Dallas in '86, and
Mm-hmm.
he gave me a gold top standard, and that became my main guitar for the next 7 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's how I kind of developed my sound, I think, on that guitar.
Right.
Um, the last year I worked with Mellencamp, I kind of really felt like the guitars were really heavy in the mid-range and lacking a little bit in the low end
Mm-hmm.
for me at the time. And I called their artist relations lady named Bonnie Lloyd, who's still a great friend of mine, and said, Bonnie, I want the Duane at Fillmore tone.
Mm-hmm.
How can we do that? And so we started talking, and we ended up doing several things to like a basic standard guitar. We added more mahogany on the back of the guitar,
Mm-hmm.
so the mahogany to maple ratio was bigger, which mellowed out the top end a little bit and gave a little more heft to the bottom end.
Mm-hmm.
We put Clouson tuners with a bigger angle on the headstock and developed some different pickups and put metal covers on them.
Uh-huh.
PRS had never put covers on their pickups before. And I can't explain it to you, but that changes the sound of
Sure.
the pickup.
Sure.
And I'm looking at Billy Gibbons and Duane Allman and Jimmy Page. They've all got these covers on the PFs. There's got to be something to it,
Right.
So we made that guitar for me, and the exact same guitar ended up being the McCarty model. So that guitar had a stop tail piece, but I loved having the tremolo on a guitar because I think that they make the best tremolo in the business, without a doubt.
Uh-huh.
I can, it stays in tune. I get the real Bigsby effect, adding a little shimmer. I also think the springs add a liveliness to the tone.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a McCarty with tremolo made, and that was my main guitar all the way through Storyville, and even into some of the years in the early 2000s when I was going to Nashville a lot. And even my first solo record, I still use that guitar a lot. And I started thinking about it and making all these suggestions to Paul, and he said, why don't we do a signature model?
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, it took 3 or 4 years to finally get to the point where it was in my hands. But we did a lot of things that aren't really, when you look at the guitar, you don't think it's that much different than a McCarty with tremolo. But the things that we did, the main things were we put 2 volume controls on the guitar so that when you're in the middle position, you can blend, you can really adjust it, whereas most PRSs just have 1 volume control,
Sure,
so you
just
get
the
the one
master.
tone.
Right.
The other thing was I described to Paul the coil tap. In the past, the coil tap had been like a 50% cut in volume and a big
Right.
boost in treble. And I really, what I wanted to get was just, if we could just do like a 25% cut in output. And I'm not sure how he did it. We tried all kinds of capacitors and everything, but ultimately, at the end of the day, we didn't use any of that stuff. But we still got to the 75% thing.
Right.
And it's just such a usable thing now for me that, like the neck pickup, I can get a really authentic strat tone. I can get a convincing telly tone out of the bridge pickup. That's been a really wonderful thing.
Right.
To be able to take it to a session and have one guitar and you've got all those tones. I wanted to have an all nitro finish. I thought, all the great vintage instruments are finished in nitro. And
Right.
so we have, it's got a thin poly bass coat, but the top is nitro. And we took a long time to figure out a formula, especially on the gold tops, that wouldn't crack in shipment. I wanted to have locking tuners that I felt worked really well, and the tuners they had been using did work really well, but I started thinking about those buttons look really heavy, and I took one off. It's like, that's heavy. And then I took all 6 of them off. That's like a pound of metal in my hand. So we came up with these Ivroid tuners, and there's that much less weight on the headstock to kind of dampen the vibration. We went with, I'd always refretted my guitars with Dunlop 6100 frets. And what that allows me to do is to use an 11 to 49 set, but it feels like a 10
Right.
to 46 set.
Right.
So I have the ability, I can still do all the pedal steel stuff, which I love to do, but I have the bigger strings and I don't know, the physics are pretty simple. The bigger the string, the bigger the tone. We put the side dot markers that they had typically used. I couldn't see them in the dark. So we put bright white side darkers so that, when you're playing an arena in front of 18,000 people and you go for a big E chord, you don't get that. That's more like an E chord to me.
That's a little nicer. Yeah, right.
The pickups, we spent a year developing the pickups. And a guy in Austin has a test guitar. His name's Ed Reynolds. He works on all my guitars, and he's a brilliant mad scientist character. He built a test guitar where there were slots here, and you could slide the pickups in and out, and the alligator clips on top of the guitar, so that it would take 15 seconds to change the pickup in the guitar. So you could really hear the difference in the pickups, as opposed to taking the strings off, unsoldering the pickup, taking it out, and by which, 15 minutes later, you've forgotten what you heard before.
Right.
We went through every boutique pickup there was, and then started sort of mixing and matching every single variable that we could. Wire thickness does it have enamel? What magnet do we use in the bar magnet? What magnet do we use in the hole pieces? Do we pot it? Do we pot it with paraffin or beeswax? Do we vacuum pot it? All these things make a huge difference. How many turns? And so with Paul's factory, they have a computer winding system that you're getting an accurate number of turns. You're going to get the same pickup every time.
Right.
So he would send me a set, 2 sets of pickups. We would listen to them. We would A/B them to the boutique ones that we thought were the most musical. And then I'd call him. I said, you know what? Give me one with 100 less turns, and let's try an Alnico 2 in the bar magnet and make it 42 gauge wire. And this went back and forth for months. I mean, literally FedEx would show up with a box of pickups every other day, and we would keep and we'd double check. We'd go back and recheck and double check to make sure we felt the same way the next day we did the day before. We found that whether you pot it in paraffin or beeswax made a difference.
That's wild.
It is sickening. I don't even want to know that. I didn't want to know that, and I don't know that I still want to know that, but it made a difference. And all the pickups at PRS were vacuum potted, which means they're dipped in the wax, and it sucks the wax through the pickup, so every part of the pickup is filled with wax. And these pickups are not. These pickups are just dipped. They're not vacuum potted, so it leaves, there's still some airspace in the pickups. It's really just enough wax to keep the top of the cover, between the top of the cover and the top of the bobbin, so that we hopefully retain some of that upper end sparkle and magic, but it's not microphonic.
Right, you're not getting the squeal.
Not getting the squeal. The neck shape is another thing that's different. What we did was we checked out my old 87, which is what they call a regular neck carve. It had a little bigger than a regular. And then my McCarty with tremolo, which is a wide fat, was a little smaller than a typical wide fat. And these are all due to whoever's sanding the neck that day.
Right.
So we kind of interpolated and made a hybrid of those two necks, which fit between a regular and a wide fat neck. And it just, I don't know, I got the guitar and I'm like, it's perfect.
It really all came together.
It all came together, I better than I could have imagined.
Right, it's all those little touches that just...
all those little touches, and I mean, then again, with the gold top, the gold tops had always had a light back on them, and we put the dark, we started staining them darker, which I think just looks better. It's more appealing aesthetically.
Right.
All these things add up.
Right.